do a round of quick introductions.
I'm David Barnes with Freeport McMurray.
Dustin Fitzpatrick.
Encino, Data Science Administrator here at PAC.
Melanie Alvarez, PAG. Don Garcia, Administrative Associate at PAG.
Yumi Zhang, Transportation Data Science Administrator at PAC.
Max DeSante, Pima County Wastewater.
Eric Uemana, County Department of Environmental Quality.
Natalie Shep, Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Anna Oden, Planning Coordinator at PAG. And then we have I think a couple of folks in the back.
My name is Molly Leiva with the City of South Tucson.
So, sorry, real quick. Everyone can hear us online, all right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then, so real quick before we go to online introductions, Crystal, are you advancing the slides?
So,
Or I can get all right, we'll continue with the introductions. I'm just going to go down our list for who appears on my end. So Jeanette.
Hi, Jeanette Durand, Transportation Planning Director here at PAG.
Thank you. Luke.
Morning, everybody. Luke Cole at Sonoran Institute.
All right, Mark.
Mark Novak, University Landscape Architect at the University of Arizona.
Nalo.
Good morning, everybody. This is Nalo. I'm the Public Works Director for the town of Sarita.
Great. I'm Christina.
Good morning, everybody. Christina McVie for the Tucson Audubon Society.
Great. And then David McAllister Romo. And if you're speaking, you are muted.
Sorry, David McAllister Romo, representing as a citizen of Pima County.
Thank you. Luke.
Is there another Luke?
Oh, nope. Just one.
I'll go. Sure. Luke Cole at Sonoran Institute.
You and Michael Catanzaro.
Michael Catanzaro, City of Tucson, Energy Manager.
Preston. I think you're muted if you are trying to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, Preston McLaughlin, Transportation Mobility Coordinator here with PAG RTA.
Over to the attendees. I'm Howard.
Howard Myers, Concerned Citizen.
I'm Alejandra.
Alejandro Fraijo, HDR Engineering, Water Wastewater Project Engineer.
You, Howard? Or, I'm sorry, is that Howard? I'm Dennis.
Dennis Roberts, Town of Oro Valley. Their Senior Stormwater Engineer.
You, and then Sean Lowry.
Yeah, I'm Sean Lowry with Ecopia AI.
Thank you, welcome. Was there anyone online that I missed?
Kimberly Baeza with Pima County Wastewater.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Else. All right. Move on to the next agenda item.
All right, we can move on to the next agenda item number 2.
All right, so this is the in-kind form, so I'm just going to read this real quick. So regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to the videos covering up that word, but to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. So if you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds.
All right. On to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from February 1st, 2024. First, are there any comments? All right, hearing none. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
A second?
Second.
Excellent. Those are approved. Yay.
Oh, so we'll need to take a
vote. Sorry. First time. All right, so we have to vote on the approval of the meeting minutes. So all of those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, now hearing no nays, I'm going to say meeting minutes are approved.
Yes, I'm not seeing any hands up or anything online as far as me. So yep, those are approved.
Excellent. All right. On to agenda item number 4, which is a briefing and discussion on the household travel study and assessment. This is the household travel study and assessment to support PAG's long-range regional transportation planning efforts. And I'm going to turn it over to Dustin Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Paula. So we're going to go into items 4, 5, and 6. I just wanted to give some background information. The packet included the statements or scopes of work for these consultant-supported projects, and Anna had distributed prior to the meeting a packet with some more background on each of the projects and our carbon reduction strategy overview. So briefly, PAG's overall work program for fiscal years 24 and 25 was approved by PAG's Regional Council in May of last year and received subsequent approval from ADOT, Federal Highways, and Federal Transit. The overall work program includes PAG's planning activities that are supported by the carbon reduction program, as well as it contains the Regional Council's budget approval for the consultant-supported efforts. So PAG's carbon reduction strategies were reviewed by Management Committee and Regional Council and incorporated into ADOT's statewide November 2023 carbon reduction strategy. So these following 3 efforts will be presented for feedback today from the committees, and the products will be incorporated into PAG's long-term planning product, the RMAP Regional Mobility and Accessibility Plan, and work toward reducing transportation carbon emissions as outlined in PAG's planning activity goals. So I'll turn it over to Dr. No to go over that first thing.
Oh, actually,
Sorry, Unimi. Yes.
Good morning, I'm Yumi. I'm going to talk about the household travel study and assessment project today. And the next slide here are the contents of today's presentation. First, I'm going to present the background of this project, and I will talk about the project task and deliveries, and I will also show you a project timeline. The COVID pandemic and technological advancement impact on daily travel behavior, BMT, energy consumption, and greenhouse gas emissions. And COVID-19 changed the daily travel behavior, especially for trip frequencies and mode choice. And after the pandemic, a significant number of individuals continue to work remotely, and it will result in less commute and business trips and more non-commute travels. Also, during the pandemic period, public transportation was the least preferred travel mode because of safety concerns. But after the pandemic is over, it is reasonable to expect changes in travel mode preferences, potentially going back to the choice made prior to the pandemic. Also, daily travel behavior has been influenced by technological advancements. Recently, we can see more purchase and uses of e-scooter, e-bike, and electric vehicles. And ride-hailing services are very common nowadays, and not a new transportation service anymore, but considering travel mode options available in 2009, it is a very new transportation service. The COVID pandemic impacted on e-commerce, and it is still going on in post-pandemic era. And more people use e-commerce instead of going to retail stores, which means less VMT for daily shopping. However, it has been quite a while to collect household travel behavior impact reasons since 2008, which is 16 years ago. And PEG was participated in National Household Travel Survey, NHTS add-on in 2008. And at that time, the travel patterns of 2,320 household samples were collected, and it is the current backbone data for calibrating and validating current PEG travel demand model to conduct accurate travel that better informs planning. So we need up-to-date data. Here's the overview of 2024 PEG Household Travel Study and Assessment Project. A household travel survey will be conducted to collect 4,200 household samples, and it is approximately 1% of the total number of household impact region. Also, travel patterns of 800 transit passengers and college students will be collected in addition to 4,200 samples. Because these groups of population could be easily undersampled, we will apply an oversampling strategy to this group. And finally, 24-hour travel diaries will be recorded by income group, age group, household size, and etc. Also, air quality impact analysis would evaluate how these changes in travel behavior influence air quality. As I mentioned, there has been quite many changes in mobility patterns, including BMT change, travel mode shift, telework participation, and trip frequencies changes since 2008. And we can assess which factor is the most influential one on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to it, we can also show greenhouse gas emission by socioeconomic characteristics or three purposes. For example, the analysis on greenhouse gas emission by gender, income group, education level, and etc. Also, we can compare greenhouse gas emission by trip purpose, greenhouse gas emission by commute versus greenhouse gas emission by discretionary activities such as shopping or leisure activities. So what will be the next step? As for the next step, first we can update input data of travel and air quality model to get more accurate model result for the transportation improvement program TIP and regional mobility and accessibility plan, the LMAP. Next, findings and strategies obtained from air quality impact analysis could be incorporated into the long-range transportation, the LMAP, also the LMAP air quality conformity. So I will summarize the importance and benefits of PEG Household Travel Study and Assessment Project below. The effort is consistent with the approved FHWA, ADOT, and Regional Council planning activities to incorporate IIJA mandated carbon reduction emphasis into PEG's long-range transportation planning to serve the entire region. The household study collects the latest and most accurate data for use in refining our transportation planning process. And PAC's expert team of data scientists will use this data to enhance air quality modeling and establish more precise baseline of mobility patterns in our region. Data would be used in the development of PAC's regional mobility and accessibility plan to establish baseline information for use in meeting carbon reduction planning federal requirements. And I will talk about the project task and deliverables shortly. At a kickoff meeting, project management plan, work plan, and data QA/QC plan will be discussed with ETC Institute, which is a consulting firm working with PAC. And project management plan focused on communication protocols, roles, and responsibilities, and data privacy and data protection procedures. And work plan is about the timeline and scope of work of each task, and data QA/QC is to assure data quality of collected travel patterns. And secondly, existing supplementary data will be reviewed and evaluated to integrate them into the data collection effort. For example, combining streetlight data and household travel survey could improve coverage and representativeness of data collection effort. To do that, study materials, including questionnaire, sampling, and respondent materials will be reviewed and discussed with ETC Institute. And third, the ETC Institute and the PAC team will work closely to design survey instrument, data collection method, sampling method, and a sampling plan. And fourth, pilot tasks will be performed to set up incentive amounts for recruitment and to develop orientation guide for call center. And fifth, the ETC Institute will recruit households and conduct a household travel survey. And next, the data collection result will be reviewed and analyzed, and the survey result will be reviewed by the PAC peers before finalizing it. And finally, a final report and final data set will be provided. And after and the project timeline. Here we can see a project timeline, and it will be a 14-month project. The project will start in May 2024, and it will be wrapped up in June of 2025. If the project will be approved by Regional Council in May, and PAC did solicitation bid process to choose a consulting company, and the institute partnered with the WSP was selected, and ETC Institute will conduct a household travel survey, and WSP will perform travel behavior and air quality impact analysis. And that's all I prepared for today's presentation. And if you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer those questions.
Well, thank you.
I have some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First of all, I think a little more explanation as to why this meeting turned into an air quality subcommittee meeting at last minute, and that these items were added just a few days ago is kind of confusing to this committee. Not to mention that these items were at Regional Council last week. So can you explain to us why they've made it back to EPAC and what we are expected to do today?
Oh, I think Dustin can answer better than me.
Yeah, Natalie, I can speak to that. So, these were brought forward at the last Regional Council meeting. Motions made to bring them forward before EPAC, AQS, and TPC for feedback to be returned to Regional Council at the meeting. So that's why they were suddenly added to the agendas.
Okay. So I just want to remind this committee that it has been about a year that I've been talking about the carbon reduction program funding. I've been asking for it to be presented. It did actually get presented as an information item to this committee at one point in time. But that was after I received a letter from PAG's attorney, basically, explaining to me that this particular topic is shouldn't necessarily be something that this committee or the air quality subcommittee, who I am the chair of, should be discussing. The reason this came back to us is because the leaders that represent us on the regional council voted to bring it back to us because it never went to us in the first place, which means that we have millions of dollars in this region that are coming to specifically reduce carbon pollution from the transportation system. Our committees have not had any input whatsoever on that. And it seems that the regional council isn't happy with that. So the answer is for PAG to put it on to this for more discussion. I don't know if we're going to be voting on it. Are we supposed to be voting on it? Or are we just talking about it?
This is for you to provide feedback on the projects and efforts that are being supported.
Okay. Well, I do, as you all may be aware, have very strong opinions about this. And I don't think a household travel survey by any stretch, especially one that's $1 million, more than $1 million, is something that is worth doing. I think it is important for PAG to do for their transportation models. I would like to know in 2008, 2009, how was this funded? Because now it's being funded with new money that's supposed to be reducing carbon from the transportation system. So is anyone aware of how this was funded previously that works at PAG?
So it was conducted back in 2008 and 9. We are not just entirely clear, and but maybe just the STBG. But this time, like just as you see that just the total sample was around the 2300, which is less than just the 1% sample, because they usually recommended 1% sample, but the budget limitation is always just changing because of a big and a bucket of money actually supposed to be used for the household travel survey. So always kind of deferred. And so still we are using we have an active base model, which is based on just our 2008 and 9 just the behavior. That was the backbone, even though we have just modified and updated our just the model, but the backbone itself is actually just based on our backend 2008 just travel behavior. So that was a kind of just a hurdle, and so we want to just bring together and for the effort and together with just air quality effort.
And do you think that any of this work will result in actually reducing carbon from the transportation system?
This is actually just the backbone and also just the behavior data. So because of a lot of just difference we have and as you see and after COVID-19, and so we hope to just use this data as also just as I remember, just the Pima County also has their own kind of survey for just the clean air and the waste and the campaign survey. So hope to just that you can just use those in there together with this just the base data. So this is not only just including certain just the population target and the low income target. We are interested in just how they behave after just the post pandemic, and also just the mid income, high income as well. And also just any household families with a different just member of households. So those all should be just included in this survey. So you can also utilize and so specific just the group and people targeted and what kind of strategy you can develop. So simply think about that. And this is the building block and just foundation of the data, likely just the use survey and using that just to your campaign. And this is the kind of just the foundation of the data, as well as just our model. We've been using just the MOVES model, and that's just a strategy, and just how we can kind of just utilize and reduce the air quality. So together with what's in the developed and calibrated model, will be just used in those changes as well. So we are interested in how we can kind of compare those like a before and after and the post-pandemic.
Okay, well, as I stated, I think, data collection is important, but when you do an air quality analysis, you're doing that on air pollution. So you're not doing that for greenhouse gases. And so I'm not really sure how that has anything to do with reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation system.
Yeah, but to do that, this is the question. We have to just build a foundation and all just the behavior. We don't know exactly what's actually just happening here. So we'd like to just understand how much changed in the back from just the 2008 and 9, and right now just the post-pandemic, just the telecommute, and is kind of popular, and but also just meaning that, and we will see more actually just the activities around the residential area. So then we can think about that after just understanding and of just the current travel behavior, then we can think about that and what kind of a strategy will be just benefited in terms of the reducing carbon reduction. So this is more likely just the foundational and the data understanding of the current behavior, especially after in the pandemic.
And also, we don't have any data for the electric vehicle user, because there was no electric vehicle user in 2008, but it's increasing, and it's quite important for us to know the current the behavior or characteristics the of a person having purchasing the electric vehicle to remove the greenhouse gas emission, right?
Yeah, there are some just understanding of how just the electric vehicle and the users and the behaviors and the changed and the more likely just preferred or not just compared to just the ICE in the industrial internal combustion engine. So that we can also just compare that and also and together ICE, just the users and the electric vehicle users, how they just behave is different and how we can kind of promote and idea to just ICE users, such like that. So that, but this is just a purely just understanding. We're trying to understand underlying like just the behaviors and we can just improve in the future.
Well, I'll just say for the record that I support spending money on, especially the carbon reduction program funds, on measures that will actually reduce carbon, such as installing public charging stations, shading bus stops. You know, PAG has dismantled the Safe Routes to School program, the Clean Cities program. We could be bringing back some of those programs. There's many, many things that we could be doing that actually reduce carbon from the transportation system right now that we know will actually contribute to that. And I do not support the use of this funding to do more studies to tell us things that may be helpful for our transportation planning. I understand. I don't want to discount the importance of a household travel survey. I think it is important for your modeling, but I don't think it is the right use of the funds for reducing carbon from the transportation system.
Hey, Christina, I think you had your hand up. Did you have a question still?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm just a little curious as to what the greenhouse gas studies that we do and get reports on from Dustin, which are very thorough and extremely detailed, and how do those inform these sorts of studies? Is the data useful? Is it transferable? What have we already got in terms of information that we don't need to replicate or duplicate? That's my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. I can speak to that. So the regional greenhouse gas inventory is an inventory of where the emissions are coming from. It crosses broadly across all the sectors of energy use. Transportation is one component of that. Within transportation, we derive simply emissions that are coming from aviation, rail, and on-road and off-road use. This would focus on particularly on the on-road emission aspect. So the inventory tells you where the emissions are coming from. Something like the household travel survey allows you to evaluate travel behavior and patterns that influence choices like selecting for electric vehicles, transit use, alternative modes, such as active modes and whatnot. So this goes into the background of pinning down where those emissions are coming from and where we can target strategically reductions from on-road transportation.
But isn't the city doing a study regarding the public transit and the increased use of public transit since it became free? Are there not other sources of this data, is my question. When you measure, for instance, on-road travel, you know, is that data going to be different than the data they're gathering here?
So the modeling assumptions that go into calculating emissions on vehicle travel like Nemi stated, based on 2008, 2009 travel patterns of 20-something hundred households that were surveyed. What we're getting at is since post-pandemic, with introduction of EVs, with lots of other e-commerce, telework, things like that, we're not capturing the modern current travel patterns that would allow us to evaluate the overall picture better.
Well, a lot of these decisions are made by employers, not by individuals. So it's basically up to the employers, especially, quote, post-pandemic. And I, as a retired registered nurse, would just assure you, we're not post-pandemic. We are still in the throes of it. But all right, thank you very much, Dustin.
So I don't see any other hands up online. I can only see the panelists. If you're an attendee and have a question, feel free to unmute and let us know. Oh, and then Jeanette, you have your hand up.
Oh, I saw Kimberly had her hand up at one point. So did you have something you wanted to add? Not to put you on the spot, but
if I did, it was a mistake. Thank you, though.
Okay, you're welcome. I just also wanted to make a quick comment. Christina had a really good question. And one of the things that UNME's project is looking at is all travel behavior. So we're looking at a broad group, a really good scientific sample size of travelers, not just on any particular mode or any one particular demographic, but the consultant firm that was selected for that very reason, so that we could make sure that we have a very good representation of all travel behavior and what people are really out there doing, not just transit riders or active modes users or electric vehicle drivers, but a complete sample across all travelers. So that's one of the focus points on this project in particular, is having that, as Hansu said, that foundational data that looks at all users, all user groups, and also trying to target the demographics that we know are underrepresented and that we don't necessarily have data for. And I know Hansu and you and me can get into some of those more refined details of how that gets collected. We don't have to go into that at today's meeting, but it's just a point I wanted to make on this item.
I appreciate that, Jeanette, very much. I'm just a little concerned, and I'm struck by what Natalie said. You know, we have had this conversation previously about these funds. I'm wondering how they will reduce carbon. I mean, that's the purpose of this funding. And I'm also wondering why we are using those funds for these projects as opposed to the kinds of things that will reduce carbon. And how does this comport with what PDEQ is doing? Because, you know, they also are responsible basically for most of the jurisdictional approaches to reducing carbon, other than the tribal situations. The nations are, of course, sovereign. So that also is kind of an interesting question, because this has been a subject that's come up many times at the regional council meeting and at the management level, how these funds will be used, and does not seem to have, despite many jurisdictions' concerns, have been addressed. I guess I'm feeling a little uncomfortable saying, oh yeah, this is a great idea, when the funding mechanism of it, well, first of all, I think it's kind of awkward to have it just thrown at us a couple days ahead of time. We don't really have an opportunity to delve into it in any great depth at all. It's not an action item. It's kind of like a cover your ass item. And I find it more disconcerting than comforting.
Yeah, noted, Christina. And, you know, ultimately, as you guys know, what funds are spent on which projects is, you know, another conversation for a different day or a different committee, but I know Hansu and Dustin are probably better at explaining how this one factors into carbon reduction. I'll let Dustin answer that question. But we are trying to be responsive to the regional council's request that was just last week. And so we want to get these things out in front of the committees as quickly as we can before.
But to what purpose? I mean, if the regional
and I
council
think
wanted feedback, then it would behoove us to have an opportunity to study the matter for more than a couple days and then provide some reasoned feedback. If it's just to say that you went before a committee and that basically you did nothing, that's fine, but let's say what it is, because if it's feedback, it's an action item. An action item means that it needs to be dealt with and there needs to be a response. And that response, in my opinion, having served on this committee on and off for 25 years, needs to be reasoned and well thought out and appropriate. If we're supposed to give feedback to another committee, such as the regional committee, I would like that feedback to be informed. By more than, with no disrespect to the presenters, but it's not an opportunity for an in-depth understanding of any of this in order to provide informed feedback. So I just don't think we can give feedback on something that is just kind of wasn't even on our agenda until a couple days ago.
Yeah, Christine, I hear what you're saying, and this is our first step in gathering feedback and comment. And to do that, we are bringing the project managers to you to explain the details and really help set that stage for what are we doing, what are these projects, and making that tie to carbon reduction. This is the first step to bring the folks here to present these projects so you can see this, that you can react to it, that you can know who to ask the questions to. So that's why we're here, and that we've brought these experts to the table today is to begin getting that feedback, and all the feedback that we get between now and the next regional council will be put together and presented to the regional council. So this is the start of that. And that is the purpose of why we're here today. Dustin, I didn't know if you had any other comments in response to that question.
Yeah, so the three projects we're presenting, the budgets were already approved in the overall work program. They're included in Table 6. They were part of our PAG carbon reduction strategies that went forth for comment and review before ADOT published those last November. We didn't receive any comments in terms of the projects or the viability of them. We're here today to get feedback on what you think of these projects. To answer Christina's point, the household travel study and assessment. I think we've provided in Nemi's presentation in the materials how understanding the travel behaviors will inform project selection in the future to reduce carbon with performance measures that we can evaluate. The carbon reduction program itself that FHWA put out didn't have a requirement for measuring metrics for carbon reduction. That next step was coming in the federal rule that is put on hold now for the greenhouse gas performance measure, where you were going to set a target for performance measures in your long range plan. This will inform how we're meeting those targets, where we can make more progress in terms of targeting specifically the different alternative modes and modes of travel. So yeah, we're here to get feedback on what you have in terms of these three projects. Any suggestions you have, we provided the scope and statements of work for what's going into them.
It would have been nice, Dustin, if you had approached our committee about these projects when they were first being proposed. It's kind of like after the fact, don't you think?
Yeah, I hear that point. As I stated, they were already incorporated into the overall work program in 2023 and programmed into the budget. And so at regional council last month, they were being put forward to approve the contracts and get these projects started along with the other 6 projects that are currently underway with CRP funding. So the motion was made to bring these back to committee. That's why you've been provided with the scopes of work, and we're looking for feedback on that.
Natalie?
So later on in the agenda, I will be giving a presentation on the Priority Climate Action Plan that Pima County conducted through a regional effort. And the way that we did that is we gave the opportunity for every single jurisdiction to be a part of it. We held numerous meetings where we discussed what we wanted to see as a priority as far as emissions reductions measures that we wanted to see implemented as quickly as possible. We selected those measures collectively, and then we did an analysis of those measures with Dustin's help, showing us what the actual emissions reductions would be of those projects. My suggestion to PAG would be to go about it the same way. Allow the jurisdictions to come up with project ideas that they think will be the best for their jurisdiction to reduce carbon within the transportation system, bring those projects through the air quality subcommittee up to EPAC, and move it up the chain so that we can actually provide the actual input on what is being done with this funding. What's happening now is PAC has unilaterally decided how to use this money. You put it in your overall work program. You refuse to let the committees be a part of that decision-making process. And now it's gone to the highest level committee, and they're not happy with how this has played out. And that's why we're talking about this right now. So it would be a good learning experience, I think, for PAG to understand that this is not the right process that's being taken, and that we can actually take the process by including the jurisdictions in the decision-making about how the funds will be used from the very beginning. And we still have time to do that. So that would be the recommendation that I would make, is that we be given 30 days or some period of time to come up with project ideas, bring it through the air quality subcommittee, and bring it up the chain so that the regional council can be truly informed from the experts about what should be done with this fund.
That sounds reasonable. Why can't we do that?
Dustin, it might help to explain the funding process for the funds that have already been allocated and future funds and timelines, just for context and use.
Yeah, the CRP funding is over 5 years, in fiscal years 22 through 26, with 3 years given to obligate that funding. The funding was obligated through the overall work program and approved basically by regional council. There will be another 2 years, final 2 years of carbon reduction funding in fiscal years 25, 26. That will also be on the table once these planning efforts have been undertaken. The decision can be made by regional council on where to use those funds as well. After we basically establish the baseline for where the carbon emissions are coming from and where to target, and the decision can be made by regional council where to program those next funds. But these initial funds have been obligated in the overall work program at this point to these projects.
So simply adding that and this study and should be just considered in the further next step and in terms of just utilizing this the CRP. And as mentioned, there's something like a strategy, a planning agency, and all those project lists and should be considered. And we actually have a plan and assess all those and impact and the different options and maximize the greenhouse gas emission and the reduction and the carbon reduction. Those kind of just also just share the theory and as just the initial and the output and to set up the goal and the direction of just the next step.
Any other questions or comments on this? Yes.
Oh, hi, sorry I was late coming in. There's one aspect of this that could impact carbon emissions, which is automobile and truck maintenance. Properly, when's the last time anyone checked the pressure in your tires, your car? Okay, that can cost you 3% of your efficiency of your fuel, 3%. And according to Department of Energy, that translates to millions of tons of excess CO2 per year from the whole US fleet. So for Pima County and our other ones, it's a fraction of that. I did inquire about that. I did my own little study. There are a few places that you get free, drive up, get free tire pressure. Lowe's has some. Most of the little, the little gas stations have gone away. So if you want to get tire pressure adjusted, you go to a machine, you put a credit card in, it's about $5 to do that. The tire manufacturer, and I did a survey in Oro Valley, the tire manufacturers like Goodyear, Firestone will give you free fill up if you come in and just ask for it. And see, we have so many seniors. I mean, it's a pain to get on your knees and check your air pressure and your little gauges, the tire pressure monitoring system. It's a little radio transmitter in your tire. Those really only go off when you're like critically low. It's like, hey, you better get air in here. So we're not hitting that sweet spot where you actually can save, potentially millions of tons of carbon. But I don't know how that affects, that could be a survey question. That could be something that could be studied, just as I did here. But that's something that's sort of low-hanging fruit in the world of carbon is efficiency, and something to throw on the table here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea, but in terms of just the survey and how we're gonna support is just preparing some actual just strategies, and it's doable in just the modeling. For example, like how we can just shift the mode and from like just the passenger car to just any active modes, and what would be the hurdle and what would be the option, just the project list we can consider, and then that would be a kind of just a real factor. And then just we are interested in just incentivizing any just public transit users, incentivizing just any active mode users, and those could be a kind of just a proper and the strategy we could think of. That's we've been kind of discussing, and in terms of building the model and analyzing the actual just the output of the air quality and the component, and using just the MOOCs model. So this is not just a simple work and using just the model. So we have to also just concern not only just the present year and as well as just the forecast year, and it's just a time. So then we are moving toward those in the analysis and how much is just will be benefited to the whole just the next generation.
Okay. All right, I think we should move forward to agenda item number 4. Or I'm sorry, 5. Hannah's going to talk about the dial ride and micro transit service area analysis.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Just go ahead and say next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so hello again, everyone. For this agenda item, I'm just going to provide brief presentation on the dial ride and micro transit service area analysis. So just brief overview of the what I'm going to cover during my my presentation. I'm going to provide a background and overview, the study, key components of the project, as well as the project timeline. All right, next slide, please. So just some background. PAG is the region's designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. The Federal Transit Administration's designated transit planning agency. PAG is responsible for studying and identifying transit service needs and opportunities for potential service expansion. So dial ride and micro transit services are key to reducing carbon emissions and improving air quality in the PAG region by providing alternatives to single occupancy vehicles in areas that are not not served by fixed route transit systems. So those might be more of the rural outlying communities. So dial-a-ride and microtransit service area analysis is included in PAG's Regional Council Adopted Overall Work Program, or OWP, to evaluate potential opportunities to improve existing service and establish new microtransit service areas where practical. So as part of this analysis, so this effort is consistent with the approved FHWA, ADOT, and regional council planning activities to incorporate the IIJA mandated carbon reduction emphasis into PAG's long-range transportation planning to serve the entire region. And the dial-a-ride and microtransit service area analysis collects the latest and most accurate data for use in refining our public transportation planning process. So data from this analysis and will be used in the development of the long-range transportation plan, so that's the Regional Mobility and Accessibility Plan, or the RMAP for short, to establish transit expansion areas to meet the objectives of the carbon reduction compliance with federal requirements. So just a little overview. What is dial-a-ride anyway? So this focuses on the general public dial-a-ride. So this provides shared curb-to-curb rides within multiple pre-established zones. These are like you see on the screen, some shuttle these smaller vehicles. So they're not the larger fixed route transit service buses. So with the general public dial-a-ride, riders must make reservations in advance, generally 24 hours. And again, it's not a fixed route transit service. Microtransit, in contrast, it's also an on-demand shared, or it's a on-demand shared public transit service that provides curb rides. So in contrast with the general public dial-a-ride, trips can be booked the same day. So it doesn't require as much advanced booking as the general public dial-a-ride service, and can also be booked using an app. However, similar to the dial-a-ride, it is also not a fixed route transit service. So again, using these smaller vehicles, microtransit might even use vehicles smaller than the typical Sun shuttle. It could be minivan type size. So key components of this project be a comprehensive analysis of existing conditions, including dial-a-ride operations and a mobility needs assessment. Feasibility analysis of transitioning dial-a-ride services to microtransit where they make sense, and new microtransit service area to provide increased mobility options. Also include identification of opportunity areas where new microtransit service could be implemented, as well as an implementation plan for potential new microtransit service areas, including booking system upgrades to make that process easier and more streamlined. Also provide recommendations for all transit service providers in the region. The project will include robust public outreach and engagement. And recently, PAG was awarded an ADOT statewide transit planning grant for a comprehensive transit planning study for the Picture Rocks and Vale areas. So this would be included in that scope. So just real briefly, the project timeline. It is anticipated to be completed by April or May 2025. There will be committee updates and presentations for the project, as well as public engagement at key stages, including the formation of a technical working group. All right, this wraps up my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and then Preston is also on the line as well from the PAG Transit side to answer questions as well. Thank you.
I have a question. Other than the booking constraints, the 24 hours versus the same day, dial-a-ride and microtransit look very similar. Am I missing something?
Sure, I'll start with that, and then Preston, I'll probably turn it over to you. So microtransit essentially would just be more streamlined, more efficient, able to serve more members of the community that aren't served by fixed route transit. So there's more flexibility. You might have smaller vehicles. So more flexibility with who's being served. The dial-a-ride, again, it's within those routes or those pre-established zones. So microtransit would be able to further expand. But Preston, I'll hand if you want to touch on that and provide some more detail.
Sure. and Hannah, you touched on some of those key points I would agree with. And I would say that microtransit and our current general public dial right are there is a lot of overlap. But the biggest I think difference would be, yeah, the way in which we book trips through our general public dial right currently is you need to book at least 24 hours in advance. It's similar to our paratransit dial ride service in that regard. So for microtransit, it would be, you would only need 30 minutes to an hour before, booking a trip just to allow the vehicle to pick up your trip and get to you where you're located. So I would say that that's the biggest difference between the two. Again, I think there's with the on-demand style service, there is a heavier focus on the technology on booking trips through an app. While there will be other options to book trips, currently with our general public dial-a-ride service, 90% of trips are booked through just the traditional phone call, and that's typically how we've booked trips is through phone. So moving more towards, an app-based scheduling service or trip planning service is I would say the other main difference. And then the actual vehicle itself. We currently use our 22-foot cutaways for our general public dial-a-ride services. Currently, we're hoping with the microtransit service, we can, scale down that vehicle and maybe add more vehicles to our fleet that are more minivan or large van sized vehicles that are better suited for this type of service. But yeah, I would say those would be the main differences between the two services, but there is a significant overlap.
Natalie?
Once again, I really struggle to understand how providing door-to-door service for people is going to reduce carbon from the transportation system. It actually could increase it. It's when you have somebody who needs to drive to your house and to drive you where you need to go, that's increased vehicle miles traveled. Not saying that this isn't an important service for those who are elderly or disabled. Absolutely it is. But I really struggle to understand how it reduces carbon from the transportation system. And since this is being spent with the millions of dollars we receive from the federal government to do just that, I do not support the use of the funding for this particular project. And by the way, carbon reduction program money is required to go through a Justice 40 analysis to show that the benefits, 40% of the benefits of the money being spent will go to disadvantaged communities. And that's another topic I've brought up multiple times in multiple committees, and PAG refuses to allow us to discuss that, nor are they telling us how this is going to benefit those low-income communities. It's being used with funds that require this analysis.
Thank you.
May I add one more
Yes.
regarding the? Yeah, regarding like just Justice 40 and the aqua related, and especially just we have just the RMAP and should be just addressed. And regarding that, just we've been actually developing many different just assessment and the performance measures and in the planning and the size. So we can actually just address, and it's actually just current and under construction. Then those actually development and the performance measures will be discussed later.
But yet you refuse to do it within a committee. Yeah, it might be
No.
happening at PAG, but it won't happen at TPC. It's not happening at EPAC. It isn't happening at Air Quality Subcommittee. I sit on all of those committees, and I've asked for information specifically about Justice 40 probably 10 times now. And not at one point did you bring the information to the committee so that we can see how your decisions that you're making on your own will benefit these communities.
So meaning that just we are not ready, and in terms of like discussing about that, because of we actually need to think about all those different factors and how we can actually show the results and how we can just show the improvement and regarding those and disadvantages in the community and factor. So that's actually we have a plan and discussing through just the different just committees about those, and our networking group is one of them, and maybe I don't know, maybe it's different guideline and from the upper management team, but that would be a kind of just the further in the discussion we have planned.
And it would be better if we could discuss it as a committee instead of you just bringing it to us to tell us. Well, we could provide input on how the analysis could be done. We can provide specific input on what's happening within our jurisdictions. And also there should be public input because we are representing the public and they should have a say in how these dollars are spent. And at no point in time has PAG gone out to any sort of public forum in order to address that before making these decisions. So I just question the strategy by which you go about doing this. It might be happening, but it's happening behind closed doors and nobody can actually see what's happening. And therefore we're not aware. Go ahead, Janine.
Yeah, this conversation is kind of gone off of the agenda item. The agenda item is to discuss and provide feedback on the microtransit study.
Telling you our opinion
My-
on what we will do, what we'll do with these contracts. And it turns out you're required to do Justice 40.
Madam Chair.
Therefore, it is the agenda item.
Madam Chair, is it my turn to speak?
Go ahead.
Thank you. We have Preston in the room. We also have Hannah in the room and Dustin also to speak on the carbon reduction benefits from this project. If they have anything they'd like to add to that conversation, or if anyone has any questions pertaining to this specific project, we would like to gather that together so that we can forward it on to the regional council.
I do have a question. I'm assuming that there are other similar programs done by whether it's private groups, nonprofits. I'm thinking maybe Pima Council on Aging may have some kind of ride service. Are you guys going to look at other things offered in the CAG area and maybe working to partner or make a more cohesive group so that you don't have multiple companies, agencies, providers making trips out to these areas?
Preston, do you want to speak to the contract itself?
Sure. I mean, I know that the RTA does work with the Pima Council on Aging. The PCOA does have a service where on a volunteer basis, drivers can pick up individuals who qualify, typically elderly individuals. So it doesn't cover all residents living in an area. And it also, there's geographic limits to where individuals can drive and pick up and drop off individuals who qualify for that service. So we do regularly work with the PCOA and we have a contract with the PCOA for them to provide that volunteer-based transportation service for elderly individuals. And then currently, I mean, in terms of the service area that Sun Shuttle covers, it's everything outside city limits. We currently have 4 general public dial-a-ride service areas right now. And those are, the purpose or one of the purposes of this study is to see if we can make these services more efficient. In terms of carbon reduction, I will say there are elements of this on-demand style service that will reduce carbon in the fact that the goal is to take individual personal vehicles off the road, single trip vehicles, individuals wanting to travel from one location to another, to consolidate those individuals and take them all, at one time with one vehicle versus a number of single vehicles. The other thing is, again, reducing the size of the vehicles that are operating these services, going from those bigger cutaway small buses to a minivan style vehicle that's gonna, increase miles per gallons and the efficiency of our vehicles. So reducing, CO2, other greenhouse gas emissions through those vehicles, kind of working on cutting back on those by making the service, more efficient in that regard. And I think, I'm trying to think if I touched on all the topics of your question. Were there any, did I miss any aspect of that question that you wanted more clarification on?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Michael, your hand is up.
Thank you. I was just wondering if any analysis has been done on your last point, Preston, in terms of the total greenhouse gas emissions we'll be reducing. I mean, part of it seems counterintuitive that it would be lowered by making a trip to a person's home to take them somewhere else. But then if the vehicles are more efficient, that makes sense. But I'm wondering if there's any data to support that you guys have processed.
I would defer probably to Hyun-Soo or someone on the modeling team potentially if we do have any data on that. I know that with this study that we're proposing, microtransit study, that's an aspect that I think we'd be exploring in that study.
The bottleneck side actually is that we don't have the data, and more likely just that we have in the Suntrend, and there's just the real time the data and to just evaluate the performances, and that's more likely just that we have. But any just the like a GPS point data we have, and it's doable to kind of analyze.
Michael, this is Dustin. In terms of the project itself, the goal is to increase transit use, which is the most form of transportation. And so with the dial ride, we're looking to enhance that experience, increase users, and that with the microtransit, it's a service on demand, but that also feeds into these folks that wouldn't normally use the overall transit system by connecting them to the fixed route. So it's not necessarily a back and forth trip, if you think of it that way. So the analysis is looking at that. What would those users do connecting to the more broad fixed route system, or if it's going to be used as just a service on demand back and forth? That's the evaluation that would be done to figure that out.
Any other questions? Anyone online? Okay, so the next part of this is going to be presented by me, Meyer, and this is on the orthophoto feature extraction effort to map active transportation infrastructure.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? I am eager to share this project with you. It's the smallest of the three, funding-wise and timeline-wise, that you've been presented with today. And I've been involved for quite a while in the background of this. Many of you know me as the watershed planning manager at PAG, but since 2022, I've also overseen the GIS department. But this project, the orthophoto feature extraction, relates to both programs actually, and data that we've been seeking long-term within our green infrastructure planning work and resilience planning work, in addition to the last 5 years of some cloud efforts that the Regional Data Working Group has been involved in. We'll get started. Also, I really appreciate the chance to talk to you more about this today. And that hope each project can be evaluated on its own merits. So first of all, like the others, I am going to talk about similar things. I am framing it as example data and uses because it might be not clear what the orthophoto feature extraction is right off for many of us. So I'll define those benefits. I'll go through the proposed timeline and scope of work that's in the consultant's proposal. By the way, I think we probably still have online our consultant representative from Ecopia, Sean Lowry on the line. So during Q&A, he might be able to help with some more technical questions. And then we like your feedback, just like we've been saying. The reason I say I'm excited about it is I have worked for PAG for 18 years, and over time, many changes, but I do feel like one thing we're consistently good at is promoting data-driven decision and providing regional clearinghouses of data to as a base for planning. So here's a look. Hopefully that's not too small for you. But here's a look at a pilot done on the U of A last year to show what future extraction would look like. This current proposal is to utilize the fall 2023 PAG regional orthophotography, which is, you can think of it as aerial photos taken from an airplane, but they utilize that point cloud of data taken at many angles from the sky to create a machine learned process where they can detect the different transportation features on the ground of infrastructure. They can delineate it in polygons and add information about the feature type and classification. So classification includes descriptions. Let me give you some examples in case you can't see it on the map. This would delineate sidewalks, bike lanes, medians, driveways, edge of pavement, building footprints, grass, pervious areas, parking lots, tree canopy, through lanes, turning lanes, so like the paint, striping, as well as curbs. The width of each of those, whether paint is used or it's a raised buffer, whether the landscape is pervious, whether it's support vegetation, and whether it has vegetation. So those last ones are also encouraged in climate reduction program funding, not only encouraging the active modes of transportation, but also those amenities that provide safety and shade, very critical in our region for climate resilience. So we generally categorize these, well, Ecopia, their terminology is 4 categories: 3D buildings, bridges, and vegetation, advanced transportation features, advanced impervious features, and 2D land cover. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the benefits and uses. So, as you know, we're the regional clearinghouse for GIS data. Not only do we gather that regional orthophotography, the aerial photos that you'll see on the Pima County maps, but we do bike maps and whatnot. So we know where there are data gaps across the region in pedestrian amenities and bike amenities. Once we have a full data set of filling in those data gaps, we can also assess where are the gaps of infrastructure. And having this baseline data could be used for many things. As you've already heard, this will be integrated into RMAP. But in addition, we will provide the data to the jurisdictions for their use. It could be used for connectivity analysis. It could be used to identify low-hanging fruit, like where lanes could be changed with simple projects like paint to provide bike lanes or buffers, or narrower lanes, which create safety for the alternate modes of transportation. In your packet, you also were provided with a page at the end of the scope of work on some example uses that have been used by Ecopia across the country. Many of them were for climate resilience planning. There's a Houston example in there. And what I like is that this is not just used for climate resilience planning, but this is data that we don't have to a degree we've never had before. Updated, more complete, more comprehensive, more consistent across the region, which will be integrated into the way we do things in PAG. like ARM. So I see it as a lasting impact of the CRP funds. Institutionalizing what we do has always been the goal with these projects. Just to go back a little bit, prior to realizing that the technology had improved to be able to get this data from orthophotos, which is much cheaper than LiDAR that people have used in the past to detect these features, much quicker, much more efficient. Before that, people drew them by hand, in GIS. So that takes a lot more time. And if we do have data across the region, it's less detailed and was more exploratory, like case studies. So looking at the timeline and on the scope of work, I've built into this several stakeholder engagement opportunities. As you can see, there's the project initiation, and then there's feedback meetings. And that's because we know we rely on subject matter expertise, not within our house as well as our local jurisdictions, to help define this data more clearly. Using local terminology, syncing up with the way other databases have been built, so it's as useful as possible. And just clarifying some things that might be different in our region than other regions, so that the machine can learn better how to detect, for example, a gravel path over a paved path. They look different in the desert. So you'll see it starts with a workshop that we would invite all the interested parties to, that would help develop refine the scope. And then we would report out on that. They would utilize the data. And then there's also peer review process at the end under task 3 to QA/QC the data. And then also another feedback process under task 5 to advise the utilization of the data. I kind of see it as, you don't want data to sit in a library. You want to discuss how to use it and promote that. So that is my last slide, and I would appreciate your feedback now, even though we have those future feedback phases. If you have any now, that could help shape our direction, and we'll take note.
Thank you, Mead. I see Christina has her hand raised.
Thank you, Mead, for your presentation. You mentioned, I believe, that there was an ability to determine pervious versus impervious structures. Could you tell me a little more about that? That's very interesting. I was looking at the slide of the sidewalk, so to speak, et cetera. I didn't see the loop really well defined in that process. And I don't know if it's all impervious or pervious, but I'm just kind of curious because providing pervious structures is, of course, so much better for the watershed. So thank you.
Well, there's a few ways to answer that, but there is a national data land cover data set that can tell us where there's impervious or pervious data. This is, for those who know, it's in a raster data set, but what we're proposing is far more detailed, more accurate, and is in polygons, which is more useful for analysis. So it would be in each median, is there impervious space? In each right-of-way, is there grass cover, impervious space, or hardscape? So it would allow a lot more computation. And that's
would it cover like pervious parking areas as opposed? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
There's been a slew of things that the green infrastructure world has been asking for analysis for, like I said, a decade, and this would enable those projects.
Yes, I see that. Thank you.
Natalie?
So how will this reduce carbon from the transportation system?
In the planning process, if this gets into, the plan is, I didn't point out on the timeline. We align this timeline, if it gets approved in May, to be able to be utilized in the active transportation plan, which then feeds into the regional mobility and accessibility plan. And that has a performance measure process for those. So it's integrating into the process that PAG uses for when jurisdictions submit transportation projects for the funding programs.
How are the ortho photos typically funded?
Federal funds.
Funds, not carbon reduction program funds?
No.
What other funds are you all using for ortho photos?
I'll have to get back to you on that. They're a unique funding source and a certain allocation just for orthophotos and LiDAR and some related materials.
So I would just say that you could be using those funds for this project as well, right?
There might, between LiDAR and orthophotos, there was some financial savings, but that would require OWP amendments. I will say that never before have we had this project done before. So I think having the carbon objective is what made us have, I guess, permission to propose that it should include these green infrastructure and impervious features. So I don't think you would get that perspective without carbon funds being available.
I can add on to that. So that again, this is one of the projects that was already funded and obligated in the OWP to use CRP funds. The orthophotos aren't funded by CRP. This specific effort is the feature extraction. So again, in terms of reducing carbon emissions, you can see in the headline that data and analysis is looking to enhance the use of transportation. So in terms of evaluating where the infrastructure that exists is, by walking, selecting projects, and to shift people to using biking, walking, rolling, commutes, transit system overall. That's how this works.
It would be layered with other information, like where are there safety issues, where is there pedestrian demand, where is, from this data, where are there gaps in sidewalks or gaps in ADA compliance that make it difficult for people to utilize those modes of transportation. So by layering it, you would know where to prioritize funding to the areas of greatest need. And that's shown to increase those modes of transportation, to have these amenities like shade, like safety.
I can see that this would be helpful. I just think that different funds should be used for the orthophotos because it would be a better use of the carbon reduction program funds to just build sidewalks or make shaded bus stops or provide more bike paths. And those would then be projects that would then be in our TIP. By the way, all of these CRP plans were extracted from the Transportation Improvement Program plan that has public scrutiny a couple of weeks ago. And therefore, there is no opportunity for any public to provide any input on this. If we actually wanted to reduce carbon from the transportation system, we would be better served by using it to do what you're talking about, the active transportation, actually trying to get people to use active transportation modes by making it easier and safer for them. I understand the importance of this for planning purposes. I just don't believe it is a good use of CRP funds to be using on this when you already get federal funding for orthophoto work.
So just to repeat Pete, this is not funding for the photography. That's already
Yeah, no.
paid for last fall.
Well, for this,
But for the
for this
extraction.
particular extraction tool, yes. So you have other funds that are used for orthophotography work that potentially could be used for the extraction tools as well. Nor have I seen any analysis about how this will benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities. So I still question the use of that. And being that we haven't seen any information about that, there's no evidence to show that this work will result in that.
Well, Hannah knows more about the active transportation plan, but that I believe includes an equity analysis. So not within this contract, because that's not their specialty necessarily, but it would be used in those next phases.
Are there any other questions online?
Not seeing any hands up. If you're an attendee, feel free to unmute and speak.
Yes, one question. I'm looking at their website, an interesting company, and one of the things that could be done with this type of technology is ascertaining land cover. In other words, green space areas, and I believe Tucson and Pima County is looking to increase tree plantings. Are we not? Is that something I've read? But that's the type of thing that this technology, so it's not just counting acres of concrete or parking lots or something, but I believe that they can use these to actually ascertain how much green space or tree planting. So there are some things that could be done that would, but it's all translation. I mean, you can measure trees and then you have to go through all sorts of algorithms to figure out, well, what does that mean in terms of carbon reduction? And that has to be, you have to TEP involved and figure out production of natural gas, electricity and everything like that. But it's sort of an indirect measure of carbon reduction. But it's something reading on their website that they have contracts, the state of Washington and the federal government for that type of thing. But it sounds like it would take some work.
Thanks for bringing that up, because that's something I was hoping to hear, is how other jurisdictions could utilize the data, because it will be at their disposal as well. So for bike ped planning, green infrastructure planning, however it's needed.
I do have a question. Didn't PAG do a tree canopy cover study or map? How long ago was that?
2018 is the last data set.
Okay, and would this provide more information? I mean, I know that in the time span, it would pick up that, but kind of going to Natalie's point, couldn't we use that map as far as like canopy cover goes to start working in those places on that map?
Somebody would have to take the time to compare that to the transportation data and assign whether canopy is present on each transportation feature. That's what we don't have yet.
Okay.
The attributed polygons.
Okay.
This is what takes that step.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mead. So then we are on.
Chair.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt on that note, but I think we've lost quorum. If Hannah could.
So for 5 jurisdictional representatives, we have City of Tucson, City of South Tucson, Pima County, and Town of Marana. Jeanette, do you know if a citizen representative?
No, they do not count towards quorum. So with that, we need to conclude the meeting, and but for those of you in the room and on the online, if you have questions about these specific projects, reach out to Hannah and those who presented today. So Thanks for attending.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but who are, Jeanette, can you say who are on the attendees list? Just make sure.
Alejandra is on the attendees list, and then Jeff Hildebrandt, but
Okay.
so just Alejandra.
I don't have any action items. There are other action items? Is there a reason I would have?
We need to conclude the meeting. We don't have quorum. Thank you, Jeff. If you could please turn off the Zoom.
Well, this is a fine first chair for me.
Well, Paula, I'm certainly hoping you're going to reschedule Natalie's presentation at such time with the air quality meeting. So we'll have an opportunity to actually review this.